Okay, so I am ready to put us live on Twitch. Let me check if it works. And I will let you know when we are on air. Again, accept cookies, collecting consents, and I think we are on. Yes, yes, we are.
We can finally do business after we click on all the stuff that modern regulation makes us do. It's like,
yeah,
to get through the website, you like click, 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 click. Okay, now I finally see why I got here.
I almost forgot.
Yeah, all right. And well, anyway, to anyone who's joining, welcome back to No Name Podcast International. It's our special series where we talk to cybersecurity experts all over the world to discuss cyber domain of the war, make new connections for Ukrainian InfoSec community, and learn from our colleagues abroad. Our guest today is Joe Gray. You may already know him from his awesome talk at NoNameCon 2020. Joe is a veteran of U.S. Navy Submarine Force, founder and principal instructor at the OSINT, which is open source intelligence and social engineering training organization, and the author of a book that just came out, Practical Social Engineering. As you might have guessed, Joe is truly passionate about all things intelligence. He's frequently researching new techniques and methods to enhance collection and analysis, all of which makes him an incredibly interesting person to talk to during these times. Joe, thank you for supporting Ukraine and welcome to the show. Honored to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here and excited to see how the conversation goes.
Yep, just a sec. Let me mute myself. Sorry, that's some operational lags on my part. Should have muted everything because I was surprised to hear myself instead of Joe. But anyway, yeah, I think everyone remembers your amazing talk at NoNameCon.
That's how I started. Yeah, that's how I started NoNameCon that you're talking about. It was pretty weird to do the intro live on air and hearing myself in the lag of 15 seconds or something.
Exactly. I think we just talked about your talk before we actually started the show, but it seems like you kind of enjoyed the conference. And would you like to join us, on site, hopefully sometime when it's safe to come to Ukraine in real life?
As soon as it's safe, please let me be your first phone call and we will make this happen. I will be on a plane to be there. More than happy to present, give training, whatever you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we do appreciate all of your support. And I think we can start with some questions on OPSEC, because since the war started, we basically try to ask people around, everyone who's kind of has some experience with this, or what would be their recommendations, or what are their thoughts on what should be done, by people in the state of war, which to some is a kind of surprising question, because I don't think people think a lot about it in the context of the war. So we were wondering basically, what are your most recent pieces of advice on OPSEC, tools to use, maybe something like DECEPTICON that you presented at NoNameCon, or some other tools that may be useful, you think, in these times?
Sure, and that's actually a really good question. And it's very timely for people in the Ukraine, but it's also it's timely for basically anyone anywhere, because privacy is in some places, privacy is being enhanced through things like GDPR, or in the States, California has CCPA. So that affords some opportunity for some level of privacy that could be used in an OPSEC perspective. But realistically, everywhere that privacy is, say, getting better, it's eroding in other places. And with that being said, my general advice for it, honestly, is pretty much universal in terms of stick with the basics. If it doesn't need to be put on social media, don't put it on social media. You're not obligated to tell the truth on social media. Every time I think about using social media beyond saying, hey, I'm going to be presenting at this conference, or hey, I've got some thoughts about this litigation or something that's coming up, or, hey, I'm giving training. Anytime it's like a more personalized social media post, I always think of the book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, right? So to a degree, I will employ social engineering concepts to put something out there that's believable enough that that's not necessarily fully true. And the level of truthfulness may vary. You know, sometimes it may be pretty close to true. Sometimes it may be the furthest from the truth. And I treat social media posts almost identically to how I would treat canary tokens or a honeypot. I may put something out there that's not entirely untrue, it's mostly true, but it may have that sliver of something that's not quite factual in it, so that if someone latches onto it and tries to run with it, it's going to set off an alert of some sort. And it could be actually a formal alert, or it could just be, oh, I start receiving email asking about this person or this thing that doesn't exist, or this word. Something to that effect would be probably the best advice. Obviously, your end-to-end encrypted messaging apps, if you're worried about government requests, I would strongly advise going against things like WhatsApp and Facebook Secret Messenger. Stick with Signal, stick with Wicker or Wire, something to that effect. Understanding that Wicker is hosted in AWS and it does have US government certification. So that means, you know, I'm not going to say what it could mean, but you could use your imagination if the US government's endorsing its use. So keep something like that in the back of your pocket. I would avoid things like Telegram, because I mean, I can't count the number of fake accounts I have on Telegram.
I was going to say, like, the possibilities that could be there, in, you know, by the fact that AWS is certified for, like, to cooperate with the government, like, is not our primary concern in Ukraine right now. We kind of concerned about some other countries, so that's probably still a good choice.
Let's wait until 2024. But one question I would like to ask, as we stumbled upon Telegram, what do you think about it as a social media? Because no one in their sane mind, treats Telegram as a secure messenger anymore. But besides the messenger functionality, there is a very strong social component. So basically, all these public chats, all this news delivery, push notifications that we get more or less in time, they are served on Telegram pretty well. I must say, right? So as a social medium, I think it might be acceptable. What's your opinion on that?
I would be conflicted with it. I like it as a social media for the purpose of investigations, because, you know, people don't necessarily think that it is secure, but at the same time, there's those lapses in privacy that people have, or there will be, I mean, just like on Facebook, there will be some polarizing line of conversation that's just going to get people arguing out of the woodwork. And when that happens, that sets up a situation where there's a lot to be collected there, a lot to be inferred. So I would tread lightly with it. Honestly, my thumb rule is, if I'm putting it on LinkedIn or Twitter, I already know it's going to be public. If it's something with Facebook, I don't do anything public, and I tend to only operate within private groups. Like, I may have membership in public groups, but I'm only going to be comfortable posting in private or secret groups, just because that's my personal threat model. For some other people, they may be a little bit more comfortable with it, but really it's what's comfortable for the person. And going back, you know, I totally kind of glossed over it initially, but this is kind of the perfect use case scenario for what DECEPTICON was built for. You know, DECEPTICON was initially built to help people suffering domestic violence get out of bad situations. The violence that the people of Ukraine are facing right now is not a domestic violence. It's a neighbor violence at best. You know, in my opinion, a flagrant act of war. But this is something that with a few adjustments to the source code, you could very easily be publishing garbage things on Twitter with Decepticon, and if the person or the account that's posting is being monitored by Russia, then it could definitely drive them in the wrong direction.
I also can, remind everyone enough that when we think about security or privacy, we typically think about secrecy, but that's by far not the only property. So, while like Vlad mentioned, I don't think that you should. Obviously, not necessarily you should use the Telegram for secret messaging, but even if you use it just to broadcast your public, I don't know, messages, opinions, whatever. There is still a threat of using a messenger that potentially controlled, by a not very friendly government or agency, because they can introduce various attacks in terms of creating fake accounts or like substituting your account. I don't know, spreading misinformation and manipulating.
Registering on a new device using your account. Yes.
Yeah. Basically, leaking your secret message is not the only threat there is to have. So I gotta probably side with Joe on this one. That ideally, I know everyone uses Telegram, but ideally, I think it's best to stick to something different.
Let me maybe just elaborate on that. So everyone's threat model is more or less different. Yeah, so there are no two unique cases. Maybe there are, but I just don't know the people who would present the same threat landscape. So if you are a target of such a large caliber that you would be attacked via a Trojan legitimate update to Telegram, propagated via an official app store or Google store or whatever store, okay, I might accept that you should avoid using Telegram altogether. But if your concern is superpowers and intelligence agencies controlling a lot of cyberspace and being able to observe a lot and infer even more, right? Then just don't post secret stuff and don't transfer confidential information via it. So that's it, right? But to consume information and be aware of important stuff happening, it's much easier to use Telegram, which is not prioritized in your Twitter feed, or even worse, on your Facebook feed, right? And gets to you in time, and control the timing of that message delivery using the operating system mechanisms and muting the channels and reading them only once a day. It's really convenient. That's what I'm trying to say. I am not Telegram's advocate in any case. I'm just showing.
No.
I'm just saying that there are drawbacks in
no,
traditional social media that make it absolutely unusable.
Know your risks is the key.
Yeah,
I do. Honestly, I agree with that sentiment as well, though. I mean, when it comes time for like investigating things, opening up things to Telegram, setting up specific notifications or muting notifications, having that there so you can prioritize as another means from an investigative perspective, that's worth its weight in gold. That's absolutely useful. When we were, because as part of the OSINT, I run a Discord server and we crowdsource operations from time to time. And when we were looking at January 6th, Telegram was really hot for that. We ended up finding a lot of stuff there. And then people that were investigating started setting up the appropriate alerts. So if a certain line of conversation popped up, we immediately saw it if it was public. So, and same thing when Russia invaded Ukraine, we did some crowdsourced stuff with that as well. And to that end, that was exactly the MO that we followed.
Cool. Okay, so I'm glad we cleared that out, because I just didn't want to sound like an advertisement for Telegram in any way.
Not at all. There's a higher probability that I'm going to sound like an advertisement of Signal and Wicker and Wire. Honestly.
Oh, these are all good tools.
I beat those drums so hard.
Oh,
while we're on air, I gotta recommend for Signal, enable, using PIN and lock your registration because of recent. Yeah, we won't get into the details recently, but basically relying on phone numbers for authentication is not the strongest part of the system in Signal. Unfortunately, I would say that's the weakest link. It doesn't make sense to have strong end-to-end encryption and have poor method for authentication. But basically, if you use those two, which I believe should be default in Signal, which I'm disappointed still are not, then it should be good. And basically, what I want, go
one
ahead.
last point on Telegram. Just to show you that I'm a little bit paranoid. After all, I do not recommend installing it on anything other than fully patched iOS or iPadOS.
Yes, agreed. Also, they have two web versions. One of them is named Z, so I guess try to avoid that one. Yeah. So your talk on No Name Con, right, which was more about, I would say, like blue team deception, right, to kind of assist people to run their social media accounts without being exposed of maybe doing something else or whatnot. Basically, Decepticon is a bot that would run social media for you. But have you considered, or have you maybe used natural language processing and ML for the opposite, basically for the analysis of what's going on Twitter, Russian propaganda, maybe detecting bots or kind of new patterns in what they do, stuff like that, like in analysis? You probably have.
I have actually started rewriting Decepticon, and me being a fan of clickbait titles, the title of it is Intercepticon. It's basically using some of the same aspects of Decepticon, but in this context, using them for the purpose of identifying and scoring bots. So Intercepticon is a work in progress with that. I've got everything done with the line of the lines of code dealing with getting the data in. So you feed it a specific phrase, a specific hashtag, or something to that effect. And what as of right now, what it does is it identifies within the limits of the free API all of the other tweets that mention that same thing. So like, a lot of the bots aren't very smart. It's literally someone writes something, they put it in their code, and then it goes out to all of these bots. And it's the exact same thing verbatim, same spelling errors, same grammar errors, everything's the same. So the Intercepticon is really good at finding that. The problem that comes with Intercepticon is it also picks up on like viral tweets and tweets from like, when I initially tested it, it was saying Kanye was a bot. I mean, we don't need to get into a conversation as to whether Kanye West is a bot or not, but
whether he's distinguishable from a bot.
Very much like it. On Twitter, right. He's not.
Exactly. So basically, between stuff in life happening and just a little bit of frustration with that, I've stepped away from it for a little bit. But basically, what I have to do is come back in, and the remaining thing that it needs before its go live time is some sort of algorithmic scoring and weighting system to be able to say it has the following attributes, like the ratio of followers to following, the time of day that it posts, looking at like source tags, that kind of stuff, and then the ratio of original content to just retweets, that kind of stuff, and then possibly proximity to other known bots, to be able to build that algorithm up to say, within this statistic confidence interval, there's a 91.7% chance this is a bot, for example. So that's what's remaining, but it definitely has crossed my mind for detecting Russian bots, but not just Russian bots. I mean, just extreme right-wing bots, because a lot of Russia's narrative is bleeding over to the US, especially leading into 2024. So, I'm looking at it from both perspectives, on both fronts, because I support Ukraine, and I would love nothing more than to see Russia defeated with this. But, at the same time, I'm looking ahead. kind of like my supervisor, he says, because with my day job, I do threat intelligence. And he's like, if you're doing threat intelligence, you have to be, borderline clairvoyant and predictive in nature. So that's why I'm kind of looking at this in terms of getting ahead in that perspective, just because I know the bots will come out. They're already there. It's just they're not as loud as they normally are right now.
So go ahead.
Instead of bothering us here, they're bothering you there, basically.
That's about to change, I guess.
Shifted priorities, and I'm sure that until 2024 the priorities will shift again.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was kind of reminding myself of your talk, original talk, I was just thinking that it would be so awesome if Joe did something like this, and I'm glad that this actually is happening. So is this bot is somehow accessible? Is it like public so people can take a look at it?
Right now, no.
It's not. Oh, okay. I was just thinking about Natalie Zubar and some of our friends from Euromaidan Press that would be super interested in this kind of tool. So when it's
a lot of people who would be interested.
So as soon as it's
I think
usable in some shape or form, definitely let us know.
I mentioned this tool to a friend of mine, and he's like, "This tool may be a retirement plan for you, there, buddy."
Exactly.
I would. This stuff is not going anywhere anytime soon. Yeah, and automating that, I think, it's a very big problem. Just when you describe the functionality, the episodes from the Undeclared War were passing by my visual memory. Did you see it already?
I don't believe so.
It's a very nice piece of. It's a TV show. It's a British one, and it's about GCHQ and right about 2024. Fighting Russian bots before the invasion, of course, and Russia is a menace. Russia is a strategic information threat, and all this kind of stuff. Describing culture of doing business in GCHQ and FSB, very close to reality, to the best of my knowledge, of course. Quite a nice piece of visual product that I would recommend, not as educational material, but if you need to show your mom or your grandma what these guys are doing to us and how, I think it's a way to go.
Perfect. I will definitely take a look at it. I'm always looking. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I'm always looking for something that's going to hook me in, that I can binge watch and then go back about whatever it is that I'm doing.
That's the way to go. And since we already kind of touched on this topic, tell us about your book. What it's about. What was your kind of goals and plans in mind on the book, and who's the best audience?
So the book is Practical Social Engineering. It just came out officially in May, so it is brand new. With that, to that end, the book, honestly, in terms of the target audience, I really hate this answer, but I kind of think everybody should be the target audience for it. The reason I say that is because I've broken the book into 3 parts. The first part is all fundamentals, foundational material. There we go.
Didn't read yet, but already got it in Kindle.
Hey, I definitely appreciate it. It'll hopefully it'll be enlightening for you, but I've broken it into 3 parts. The first part's the foundational stuff. So here are the psychological concepts. Here are the things that you need to know about persuasion, influence, rapport, manipulation, Dr. Cialdini's principles of persuasion, why social engineering works, basically. And then during that section, I also talk about OSINT. So how do you do OSINT operations from the lens of social engineering in this situation? How do you do this from the lens of it for people, right? So how do you collect enough information in an intelligence context about people to be able to use it for influence and rapport? And then also look at it from a perspective of businesses. What can you find from things like DNS? What can you find using some of the tools like ReconNG, the Harvester, stuff like that? Then the second section is all about how you actually do social engineering. So how you may frame your phishing or your vishing attempts, things you may say. So like, for example, what is your mother's maiden name? That right there, people almost around the world, people are conditioned to, when they hear that phrase, they already say, no, not going to happen. Or in my case, my mother's maiden name was Mom, right? Some non-answer. But if I pose the question this way, what was your mother's name before she was married? You're not conditioned for the word maiden is not in there. So you're not conditioned to defend against that. So it's asking questions. It's not what you ask, but it's how you ask it. Something I talk about in my search engines course. I talk about with search engines, it's equivalent to negotiating with 3-year-olds, right? What do you want for lunch, right? You ask them what they want for lunch, you're going to hear some of the most off the wall things. You're going to hear like octopus tartare, right? When instead, and I'm gonna do something here for you. Instead of saying, what do you want for lunch? Do you want pizza or borscht for lunch, right? Understanding
some
that
parenting advice here as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
reframing the first time you reframed it in order to avoid automatic blocking, right? Which is well established already
exactly.
in the culture. And the second time you frame it as a choice, which is basically non-existent, but it's what you can afford in this situation, right?
Exactly. And
nice.
I had to throw borscht in there because I know that it has been designated as Ukrainian heritage, and definitely got to go for that. But and even asking it that way, you might get like octopus tartare pizza and squid borscht. You might get some off the wall answer, but it's closer to what you're looking for. So, normally I talk about that in the concept of search engines, but it's also in framing your question. It may be, to a degree in social engineering, leading someone to an answer one way or another. The problem with that is you've got to be a little bit careful, because if you get someone and you set off their spidey senses, they're going to lead you in so many circles and rabbit holes that, it's unreal. If you want to see that in action, the Layer 8 conference in Rhode Island, it's all social engineering and all OSINT. Any of the after parties associated with that, you're dealing with a bunch of social engineers. It's like trying to get authentic information from a group of con artists, basically. And it's all in, it all means well, but at the same time, that's something to be aware of. And then the final section of the book is defense against social engineering. If I wouldn't have gotten sued by the J.K. Rowling estate and Harry Potter and all the people associated with that, I love the idea of calling it defense against the dark arts, but I don't have the legal budget to go against that estate. So we just called it defending against social engineering. So that's where we talk about things like awareness programs, metrics that actually matter, and then things like threat intelligence to a degree as well. So producing your own threat intelligence to a degree. It's nothing too big. It pretty much sticks with indicators of compromise. It doesn't go any higher than that in the pyramid of pain, but it's a starting point, as well as places to actually consume threat intelligence like OTX, for example.
One question.
Yes.
Yeah, please go.
Oh, no, I had nothing.
I just wanted to ask, did you touch in the book the topic of actual control and operational infrastructure for social engineering exercises, let's call them like this, to be conducted in the
yes and no.
testing?
I did, but I didn't, because from a social engineering perspective, I don't see even going commercially, because the majority of social engineering attacks that come in are coming in off compromised infrastructure. So that's going to be via account takeover on Google, Microsoft, or another well-known platform, possibly. So if you're going to emulate what the adversaries do, then there's no sense in setting up your own server solely for the purpose of sending phishing messages, right? I would see it just as applicable to misuse a Mailgun API or SendGrid or something like a mailing list type thing, or just O365 or Google, because in that case you have all the hallmarks. I do talk about setting up SPF, DKIM, and DMARC to be able to make it through, because that's something that does catch a lot of adversaries with their pants down right now. They don't go setting that stuff up. So it's like, hey, this failed authentication. So I do talk about the authentication perspective in there. But I primarily say, hey, you need 2 domains. Go off, buy this domain, use it for your landing page. I don't spoof. I prefer to squat. So find something that's very similar to whatever you're targeting and go buy a similar domain. And then send the email from one and send everyone to the other one. That's kind of the TTP that I push for. And then I even go as far as, hey, here's Let's Encrypt. Here's how you use Let's Encrypt. So you have the full life cycle, but you're not, I do talk about things like GoFish, but you're not relying on having to maintain your own mail server. You're not having to worry about having that architecture exposed on the internet so that it could get identified by someone. You don't have to worry about any of that. I mean, the worst case scenario is you get burned by Google or Microsoft, and then you rinse, repeat, and do it again. And I mean, you'll just continue to get burned, but it's okay, because you shouldn't be using the same sender email address or the same landing page domain every time. If nothing else, clone the website, which, I mean, I even provide source code for a cloned website. If nothing else, just change the logo and move it to a different host on a different IP address on a different domain. I mean, if nothing else, that's all you would have to do in between engagements. Change one single logo and move it.
There are 2 problems, unfortunately, as you mentioned. I'm very glad that there is a source for this information compiled in one place, because that's basically what you need to teach the younger colleague when they start mastering this stuff, right? But these 2 problems are that I'm talking about is, first, that Google and other browsers are getting better and better, with it, identifying spoofed and phished and squatted websites almost in real time. Basically have a very narrow window of opportunity to leverage that infrastructure, and in several minutes you just absolutely burnt and you need to move to another one. And the second thing is engagements are finite, so it spent all the time on preparing for a social engineering exercise, getting burned by Chrome safe browsing or whatever, and then just having to start over is a little bit of pain. So I just would like to have maybe some word of advice on that, and I got it. I think that just you have to be prepared, and maybe if there is one shot per infrastructure, just have more infrastructures prepared.
100%.
I'm actually listening. Sorry if you had something to add. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just listening to this and basically can't help thinking myself, this would be an awesome book to translate to Ukrainian a lot.
Not so many readers, but it would be, definitely.
So actually, I've kind of already thought ahead of you on that as well. So you may be aware, but right after the invasion, myself, Brian Brake, and a few other people in the US, we put together within 48 hours, we ran our own conference via Zoom and Twitch. It was called SunflowerCon. And basically we were trying to raise money for Ukraine because we didn't want to touch the money. We just told everybody to donate to Nova Ukraine. Our opening speaker was Marina Krotofil. We also had Bryson Bort, Malware Jake, Lawyer Liz, several other people on there. A lot, like basically we called in a lot of favors with, the large personalities that we knew that would, if they tweeted about it, they would draw people in. But we actually talked about that. And then when I was communicating with Nova Ukraine, they actually have a deal with my publisher, No Starch, to translate No Starch books into Ukrainian. So it's not that far-fetched to translate. It's
wow, that's amazing.
Nova Ukraine just has They just have a little bit of stuff going on right now before we can get to that point. But yes,
I can imagine. Yeah.
I volunteered as tribute as soon as I saw it.
Awesome. Definitely looking forward to that. And
Great.
it's just amazing to hear this level of, collaboration and being in front of the scenes.
Yeah, guys. I would like to come back to security awareness training, because it's kind of like some active debate right now in academic community, at least in terms of like effectiveness of security awareness trainings. And I would like to hear like some Joe's comments how you should actually train personnel, right, like to spot these phishing emails, right, and what actions to do. There was, for example, like this, I'm not sure whether you're aware about this research paper, I think published at IEEE S&P last year, where they actually found that, this common practice of just showing a page at the end that, okay, this was phishing link and you clicked and, you should spot this and that is actually not that effective. Is there like any hints in your book about it?
So the problem with that is it's a communications gap between management and the employees, right? Because employees, they tend to get the idea of, oh, management's just trying to trick me, right? At a previous job, they were very aggressive about sending out phishing emails, and some of them were really, really effective. Like on my first day, I'd had the email account for about 3 hours and they got me. I admit it, they got me. But it was also my first day. I hadn't announced it anywhere. And it's like the probability of someone getting someone on their first day is pretty low. Because you get so many emails on your first day, you don't know what's real and what's not yet. So, and then I got like 2 or 3 a week the whole time I was there, right? Is that excessive? For an automated system, I think it is. I think it was burning up a license. And it just kind of was like, it almost felt like they were just trying to trick me. There wasn't any learning experience with it. They never sent out any metrics or explanations saying, hey, users, we sent out this fish. Did you see it? Well, this is what was fishy about it. Here's what you could have done differently. They never did that. But, as soon as you clicked on it, I mean, you got hit with the extra training. So, I mean, I get it. But from my perspective, I think that it has to be one of those situations where security and management has the conversation with the users and basically says something to the effect of, we know you hate this training. We're not fans of it either, but we've got to do something to get ahead of this. We have to embrace the suck together, right? We have to understand that this sucks, go through, do it. All right, now you've been trained. So here's the deal. If you get a fish, send it to this email address, phishing@domain.whatever, right? You could do it that way or whatever. That's great, but that's where a lot of companies stop. And that's where I say, go further. When I was in the Navy, next to every single telephone that I ever saw on a military installation, there is a piece of laminated paper and a grease pencil next to every phone. And it was the bomb threat worksheet. And basically it's a list of questions. Where's the bomb? What will detonate it? Who are you? Where are you calling from? What is your phone number? What is your contact information? What is your motive for doing this, right? It was a list of things that you should go through if someone called in a bomb threat, right? Well, let's move that over to social engineering for a second. Okay, you click on a fish. That worksheet was management's defined response that they wanted people to do, right? So why don't we have a defined response next to a computer of, hey, if you accidentally click on a fish, here's what we want you to do, right? And there are so many possible answers from that. And the possible answers could be, we want you to shut your computer down. We want you to log off. We want you to lock your screen. We want you to disconnect from the internet or the network. Do nothing, right? And then how do they report it? In a previous life, I coordinated with HR and they sent an email out saying, this is a cyber alert. Contact security via phone. The gate guards, their extension was 6695. Mine was 6696. They wouldn't speak to me for 3 weeks because out of the 70 some odd people I worked with, one person called me, one was on parental leave, and everybody else called the gate guard. So you have to be precise. Contact this phone number, contact cybersecurity, contact whomever at this number, send an email to this email. Or, I mean, in the COVID world, this isn't that applicable, but pre-COVID, or walk over to this person's cubicle or do this. You know, there's so many ways, but when you leave it up to non-technical, non-security minded users to make technical security decisions, they're going to do their best in good faith, but oftentimes it will not be correct or adequate. It may come from a good place, but it still may not be what we are looking for. So tell them what you want them to do. What I did, honestly, I changed all of the network cables in my employer. Whenever after that cyber thing, after everybody called the gate guards, I changed the colors of the network cables, and I put a pair of scissors on everyone's desk, and I said, unplug the yellow cable. If you don't feel comfortable unplugging the yellow cable, cut it with scissors. That was their incident response. If you click on a fish, unplug the yellow cable or cut it. That isolates you from the network. I don't have to worry about Locky going everywhere because that's, you know, this was 2016 when Locky was running wild. I didn't have to worry about Locky spreading. I mean, I did, but not as much. So that was something to be ahead of it. And I mean, even the least technical user you have, they know how to use scissors and involve them with it. So that's the big thing on the awareness side. But going the other direction, you also have to have meaningful metrics. I don't really care about clicks. I don't really care about opens. Emails are meant to be opened, and sometimes some of the links just look so good that you have to click them, and then you find out, oh no, this was a phish. What I care about is basically, I call it distance measurements. I care about the time between someone's opening or clicking something until it is reported, acted upon, or resolved. That's what I care about. It's basically your time to respond. That's really what I care about. I care about I don't care about how many people open the email. I care about how many people report my phishing email. I care about how many people that click the link report it. So I will devise those as both ratios. So 10 people opened the email, 3 people reported it. So you have a 30% reporting rate. You should try to improve that. Or, you know, 25 minutes elapsed between the time that the first person opened the email and the first person reported it. Okay, let's see what we can do to improve that. Because with social engineering, specifically phishing and those types of attack vectors, we have things like Proofpoint, Mimecast, Microsoft and Google have their stuff as well. Then you have things like Abnormal and other solutions out there that do a good job of it, but there's always going to be an instance where someone makes it through. And I don't like to blame the user, especially, you know, you've got someone in accounting. They're really good at crunching numbers and making sure everyone is paid on time and money's collected on time and that everybody stays above ground. Cool. Well, they're not necessarily the most well-versed in security, nor should they be. I don't care that they know how to configure a firewall. I care that they know how to configure my paycheck coming in as it's supposed to. I mean, if they want to put a little extra on it, I'm okay with that, but, you know, just don't get yourself in trouble. But that being said, if it comes through, you know, we have to understand that as security professionals, we have to have the supporting infrastructure to be able to withstand that. And it kind of comes from the concepts of Win Schwartau's book, Time-Based Security. Don't worry about securing everything. Don't worry about blocking everything. Make sure that you have your defenses enough in order that they can withstand an attack until you are afforded the ability to detect it and respond to it. And that's basically the same concept that I look at with social engineering. Because social engineering, it is a people problem, but if people fall for it, it's not, I mean, most of the time they're getting hit by a professional con artist, right? believe in taking a non-punitive approach. It's like, take this as a learning experience. I mean, there is a certain point to where this person is willfully clicking every single fish they receive. Okay, it's time to do something. But, you know, if a system, I say this frequently, if a system within an organization is so fragile that it cannot withstand someone clicking a link and going to a phishing site, their security architecture team should really rethink their life decisions in terms of what they've built.
That's a good point. And I think in general, it depends on the expectations you have from the training. It's not like, I believe a lot of organizations are a little bit guilty in this, where, you know, if they run the training, they say, okay, now we're good, but it's not binary like that. I think the good training, if it's good training, is more about shifting the mindset a little bit of all the employees to be a little bit more aware, because there is no way to cover all of the scenarios. And one interesting scenario I've seen in real life actually was, for example, to exploit vacation responders in the organization that kind of give out a little bit of custom, information that people don't think about. And, they hit a list of emails they have, they get some vacation responders, and then that particular was about someone being on parental leave, and then the person writes, or the attacker writes to another employee like, hey, I know this, person I is on leave until, could you help me out? And you go, however the rest goes. It's just really tough to kind of foresee such scenario.
Absolutely. I mean, with the Ascension, I maintain a mailing list for that. I mean, it doesn't have a whole lot of people on it. It's under 1,000 people, but if I send something out saying, hey, I'm going to be doing a book signing at such and such, or hey, this is the upcoming training, almost every time I'm going to get at least 2 to 3 vacation responders. And I remember, I remember in Outlook, at least about 5 years ago, you used to be able to set Outlook up in such a way that you could actually have one for internal and one for external. I think that's probably still the case. I'm not sure if it's the case with every platform, but I see where there could be some value in that. But, if nothing else, if I'm doing a social engineering engagement, if nothing else, I get the company logo out of a lot of people's signature blocks. So that could be useful, unless there's like a tracking pixel in it or something for like BIMI. But the other thing that's very important with phishing awareness, or just social engineering awareness in general, is you are absolutely correct, and it's not one and done. It's something at a minimum, it should be quarterly, because everything's going to change. What they're trying to do is going to change. One quarter it could be all about trying to get ransomware. The next time it could be all about trying to steal credentials, right? It's all going to vary, and you need to be able to address what is the here and now, taking an informed approach. And that whole phishing email address I said, hey, forward all those fish to, hey, guess what? That address, that's going to be some source of intelligence for your next quarter based on what you're seeing, right? And then from that, the other thing that I left out is role-based training, right? The executives, they deal with a problem that other people don't deal with. Accounting, they deal with problems that other people don't deal with. HR, same thing, because they're high value assets. I don't like using the term targets when talking about people, but they are high value assets, right? There are reasons why someone would want to compromise their accounts. So have your baseline training for everyone, but then role-based training as well, based on you work in this type of role. So this is the kind of stuff that you should really expect to see.
That's awesome. Is there any particular type of training or awareness programs you'd recommend for Ukrainian organizations or government to have during this time? Something that could be thrown rather quickly,
I don't have any, there are good products out there, but I'm not familiar enough with anyone's current state of product that I would be comfortable saying yes or no on.
Yeah, it's definitely understandable. A lot of problems that Ukraine faces right now is not. It's not that it's impossible to be done. It's just we need it like now, or better yesterday, and that could be
exactly.
Sometimes. Go ahead, Vlad.
I just while we are at social engineering, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about more subtle changes in organizational culture, not just focusing on training and awareness, but maybe shifting the way people work, the way people use technology, the way people consume information and react to distractors a little bit. Because one thing is on my mind for a while that I observed on my own anecdotal experience. I just wanted to check whether it correlates with something you observe in your practice. So from the works of Kahneman and Tversky, we know that there are automated functions in the brain, and people normally tend to automate everything that that pops up, pretty frequently. So unread emails and unread messages are one type of this trigger, and this is wildly exploited by social media that we discussed in the beginning, right? But what do you think about this slight update to the working culture in an average organization? Schedule your time dedicated to react to correspondence. Like, do it twice a day. Do it not as a distraction from the main activity that consumes all your attention, and in this way positions you as a weaker target to anything that comes in or pops up or whatever. But instead, just schedule 2 slots, an hour long, before and after noon, and mindfully react to everything that comes in order to be well prepared to what might look fishy.
I have 2 thoughts on that. Number one is from the perspective of, if you change your course by 1 degree in about 6 months, you'll be going the complete opposite direction. So minor subtle changes can be highly powerful, but the one thing about saying something like, I read something similar about having mail windows to where you only check your mail like twice a day. For some people, that could work out very well. For some people, it may not. Just because, varying, I mean, I'm neurodiverse myself with ADHD. Depending on how someone is wired, for some people, that would work exceptionally well. For some people, that may be catastrophic. For some types of roles, you pretty much, the checking once or twice a day may not be effective because you may miss something.
Exactly. If your work consists of reacting to correspondence, that won't work.
Yeah. For general people, though, I mean, I wouldn't discourage someone from trying it, but I would definitely say, do what works best for you, because in some cases you might have some situations where it may work exceptionally well for some people, and then other people, it may just make them crumble. It could be something where, someone has a probability of getting a high volume of email, and they may just go in, and it may be enough that they could do within an hour, but it'd be a situation where psychologically it just overwhelms them and then causes a certain form of anxiety that pretty much disables them from being able to complete the task. So for something like that, I might even say, it may make more sense to allocate the last 5 minutes of every hour to checking email. But whatever
the dedication of these short spans of time, it might be beneficial in your opinion, right?
It could be. I mean, it's going to vary from the person. Between the 4 of us on here, we all, we're all wired similarly, but ultimately differently. So therefore, what works for one of us may not work for the rest of us, and vice versa. So I would say, from a social engineering perspective, test what works for you. See what works out. Like, are you able to be, however you define productivity, and what I mean by that is whatever you and your boss agree on for productivity. What are you trying to produce? Test it. For 1 week, check your email twice a day. For 1 week, check it 4 times a day, or at the end of every hour, whatever. Test it and find out what works so that you're able to meet your productivity requirements, but at the same time, you're not causing any undue stress or anxiety for yourself as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was going to say that it's basically just with everything that's going on around us and all the number of alerts that we have, to me, it seems that ADHD is not like, it's actually the norm for the average person. And you got to have some type of deviation to actually be able to kind of efficiently block it and ignore all of that. So that's a little bit tough. But yeah, it largely depends on the person. Alex, you had something?
Yeah, I want to also wrap up on technology side, right? Coming back a little bit because we talked about like this phishing infrastructure, and some companies I know they see like MFA, like also ultimate solution, right? And okay, we protected with second factor, right? And we are fine.
It's
so
very
yeah.
Popular delusion.
Exactly, and that's why I wanted to ask, like why we have Joe here, right? Like how hard it is to make the life of phishers and social engineers is really like much harder, because we see actually recent events, right? When actually like phishers get through like MFA as well, right? For Cisco attack, right? And Microsoft also posted like some MFA phishing kits.
Well, let's first maybe define MFA, because not all second factors are created equal. If it's a true MFA, it has chances to prevent phishing.
I was gonna say we can say we can have separate.
Let's say true. Let's say
actually,
even. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the topic of MFA, so I will be the first to tell you that not all MFA is created equal. I will tell you that I do prefer SMS based MFA over no MFA.
Oh, so no argument could be built up.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's when we get into the tricky places, right? That's when you're getting into the apps like RSA Secure ID, Duo, Okta, that kind of stuff. Or the RSA Secure ID tokens, the one that everybody used to wear on their badge and thought they looked cool by having it on there. And it's like, oh, you work in something sneaky. Let me see what's going on here. Hey, I forgot my badge. Can I walk behind you? Right, more or less. And then finally, now you've got the U2F or FIDO, things like YubiKeys now, right? So YubiKeys, that one's probably, if we're talking something physical, from a social engineering perspective, that's probably the one that's going to stop me in my tracks. Because with the others, if it's got a code associated with it, and I can call and get someone talking on the phone and be like, hey, just cook up some story about it to try to get the person to give you the code. I've bypassed it. It doesn't matter if you're using Duo, Okta, Google Authenticator, whatever, right? You could be using any of those. And with social engineering, it's not always what you ask, but it's how you ask it. It's how you build up and lead to it. The problem is with something like a YubiKey, there's no asking a hardware appliance, and even with that, even going that direction.
Notepad. Open Notepad, plug in, press the button, and then just read it out letter by letter.
Right. I mean, that's possible, but
extremely unlikely.
Highly unlikely, and very accident prone with that. So for something like that, that's where you'd have to look at more a different approach. You would need to go with a different set of technological attacks. But if there's a numeric output from it,
it's phished.
It can be compromised. Or for that matter, I mean, even like Duo and Okta, they both have the whole push thing, right? Where you go to log in and then you'll get the notification on your phone. Yes, it was me.
Choose the time wisely.
Try doing that
Friday night, everyone is accepting anything on their phones.
or just try doing the attack around 9 a.m. each day. You'll get some clicks, because that's the first thing people do at work. They log in and they'll think, oh, maybe it didn't get through, and just click another time. So yeah, there's always a tool for everything.
To that end, honestly, what I found is useful when you're going to try to bypass that kind of stuff, don't just do it blanket. I would say have them on the phone, be talking off their ear, get them, we'll say, well lubed up for conversation, and then when it comes time, do what you're going to do, and then you should have enough rapport with them to where they'll just universally trust you and do it. or you can talk fast enough and quick enough to get them to completely stop paying attention and just do it.
We have some questions.
Yeah,
that's
what I was going to
we'll
say.
need
We
to
have
wrap it up.
questions.
We want to be mindful of Joe's time as well.
Something regarding the YubiKeys. I don't know what that person is talking about. Are there any?
I guess the question
YubiKeys?
is, you know, do you use YubiKey or something else, right?
No.
I guess that's
Are off-brand YubiKeys as good? Does it mean that there are pieces of technology that's similar to YubiKey and follow the same principle? I thought it's pretty much unique stuff.
I guess other FIDO keys or something. Yeah, but
yeah, there are like different hardware keys. YubiKey is not the only thing on the market. It depends. Like I would say the same thing that Joe says here. It's better than, you know, other type of MFA. It's better than SMS. Most likely, it doesn't mean that nothing can happen to them. Just like to YubiKeys, just YubiKeys are probably less likely because it's an industry standard.
Yeah. So YubiKey is the standard, or I'm sorry, FIDO is the standard. YubiKey is a brand. It's kind of like in the US for facial tissues, right? We have Kleenex and then you have everyone else. But you don't say, hey, hand me a facial tissue. It's like, hey, hand me a Kleenex. It may be a completely different brand, but that's kind of the brand awareness with it. The one thing I will say, though, is when traveling internationally, I mean, if I were going to be in certain places of the world right now, with my computer, I've got it configured in such a way that I can log in with the YubiKey and require it. I have that turned off at home because it's not part of my threat model. But if I were traveling to certain parts of the world right now, I would totally have that enabled. And if someone wanted to look into my computer, I would eat my YubiKey. That's the one good thing about a YubiKey as well. From an OPSEC perspective, if you don't want someone to access it, you can eat it.
Nice.
Just make sure to get the smaller YubiKeys like these. Don't get the one that connects to both Thunderbolt and Lightning.
Get stuck easily.
Not only can you eat it, you can actually come back, get your access back, and use it. You know, maybe a day later.
One important advice here: do not change your computer name after you have enrolled the YubiKey to log in.
Yeah, have everything set in place. Don't go messing with anything, because it's if you get yourself in trouble with it, you are stuck.
Yeah, that's what happened to a guy I know. Okay, another question. OSINT draws a fine line in terms of ethics. Okay, for those of us where they're going too far, line is blurry. Where goes Joe and the assemblage here? Where does Joe and the assemblage here feel is too far when engaging in OSINT? Oh, interesting question. Joe, what is your thought about it? Like the dual use of OSINT?
It's gonna vary from investigation to investigation. Just like anything, can it be misused, right? You can misuse a hammer. You can misuse water. You can misuse anything. It is a very important tool that could be used good or bad. For me personally, I tend to only try to do investigations when there's a significant public interest in it. Things like January 6th. Russia declaring war on Ukraine, things like that, or an investigation like, hey, this person's missing and their family just, if nothing else, wants closure to know that this person's okay, or if they've met their demise. So with that, some lines I draw within OSINT and specifically investigations, like if one of you paid me to say, hey, I want you to investigate me. Tell me everything you can find about me. Okay, you are the one authorizing it for you. I have no problem telling you every single username, password combination I'm able to find in every data breach on the planet. Right? But, you know, using another European conference as an example here, let's say Hack in Paris or DEFCON says, hey, you know, we want you to do an investigation. Not that either conference really would. We know they wouldn't. They're both great conferences with great people. But if they said, hey, well, we want you to do one on No Name, we're looking at doing a merger and acquisition. Let's do one on No Name. I would say, okay, in the report, it would either be, these are the accounts that I found compromised, or these are the statistics on the passwords that I found that are compromised. Because at the end of the day, when I submit a report to someone, I have no assurance that the people receiving the report are going to act ethically. I have no assurance that they are going to protect the data the way that I would want it protected. And with that, it's a situation where, who's to say there may not be an abusive manager that gets access to the report and decide they want to do something malicious. They might, they may have already been shot down with unwelcome advances to another employee numerous times, but then that employee's information was in a report. Now they can log into their social media. Now they can get their intimate personal information. That's a problem. So ethically, that's kind of where I try to stop with that. If it could cause harm, I try to prevent it from being published. In some cases, just because you find it don't mean you need to report it everywhere, right? So sometimes it may be a situation where you have controls on your reporting, right? It could be like, this is TLP red, or in some cases I'll be like, this is TLP black. You take this to the grave. Like, no one else hears this. This is TLP black. It's like, I do OSINT. I know where you live. This is TLP black. But whatever. I think
we need to unpack it here, because not all of our listeners may know what TLP stands for. So it's basically the schema, like the convention of marking documents a certain way. It spells traffic light protocol, right? So if it's green, basically it can be publicly disseminated. If it's black, it's for you personally. If it's red, it's to be used within a group or something. So yeah, black is not widely used, but it means
exactly black is not. Black is just totally fake. There's no true TLP
you made
black.
It up. Okay, because
I made that one
up.
It's white, green, amber, and red. I think there may be a yellow in there as well. White, there's no controls. Red is the most stringent controls, only internal within an organization. Amber would be kind of like within ISACs. Green like would be
community.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of it's a means. It's an alternative classification, as you said, schema. It's not like confidential, secret, top secret, that kind of stuff, but it is a means to understand how shareable a certain piece of information is. Like oftentimes in conferences, you might, like when you get a bunch of OSINT or social engineering people together, you might see them and they'll all do this. All right, this is TLP red, but, and then they'll tell you something. You'll be like, I saw that like 6 weeks ago on Twitter, dude.
Yeah,
there is a secret I wanted to tell you, but please do not tell it to anyone else. I just wanted to maybe wrap it up about the ethics concern of doing stuff like OSINT or social engineering or whatever. Do not dox good people, dox bad people. No, not like that. So you have maybe to admit that you possess a power, right? Kind of knowledge and craft that empowers you to do certain asymmetric damage if applied without proper control. So just control it.
100%. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. It's one of those things, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I always think of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. They spent all this time worried about whether they could. They didn't stop to think if they should. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you need to do something. Sometimes people may mean very well with something, but they may just implement it a kind of a bad way. And in those cases, it's, like I've seen that like in the US when the Surfside apartment complex collapsed and they were trying to identify people. I found, there was a group of people, they meant well and they were investigating, they were trying to find things. But the problem is they had it on an open Google Doc and everybody was able to access it. I was like, hold on, I've got a place that I will help you with this. So I talked to them. We moved it into the OSINT Discord. We set up the access controls for a drive. We had it to where people had to opt in to get in. And it's like, okay, this is just helping you be a little bit more private with it as opposed to leaving it out there. And then ultimately, I'm not saying that this is the root cause of it, but then, because of things like that and some of the true crime stuff, some of the people who lost their lives in that, their identities were stolen. Mm-hmm. So, that was an innocent intentioned mistake that could lead to catastrophic outcomes. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about OSINT and social engineering for that matter, you're dealing with real people. You are dealing with, what we may refer to as the meat space, right? Computers and firewalls don't have feelings, right? You can go off and you can DDoS every firewall on the planet. You're gonna upset some administrators, and you're gonna get some threat intel people start climbing up your rear to try to figure out what's going on. But at the end of the day, they don't have feelings. I mean, even if you knock over a firewall, it's going to cause harm to an organization, but it's an organization. Organizations are not people. With social engineering and OSINT, you're dealing with something that could lead to mental harm, physical harm, emotional harm, either self-inflicted, or it could allow their abusers or oppressors or someone else to be able to geolocate them and be able to cause that same harm again. So these are all things you have to take into consideration. That's the one thing that is dramatically different between I'll say the intelligence disciplines dealing with humanity and the technological intelligence disciplines. Mm-hmm. I mean, a satellite doesn't care if I throw if I throw a rock and hit a satellite, yeah, it might break the satellite, but I mean, the probability of loss of human life is pretty low.
That makes sense, and thanks a lot for all this insight, Joe. I think we just want to be mindful of your time and kind of wrap it up a little bit. And the last thing that we typically ask is there anything you want to say, advise, or any message you want to send to Ukrainian audience before we wrap it up?
Glory to Ukraine. I look forward to visiting No Name, Kyiv, and Ukraine as a whole. Once Ukraine is victorious amongst this unlawful war with Russia, you have my support. I will definitely be trying to do whatever I can and help however I can when possible with anything. I mean, during the war and after. Like I said before we came on, No Name Con was one of the many conferences I presented at during COVID, and the care package and the conversation, the quality of the conference and how they treated me as a speaker speaks volumes. So as soon as this happened, I was like, hey, I'm going to jump in and help. And then I'm just hanging out one day and I get a message. It's like, oh, what? I'm glad you asked. I would love to do this. And now I'm here. Absolutely. Beyond that, just in the words of System of a Down, stay smart and think dangerously. Just keep your head on a swivel with everything. Keep your OPSEC ducks in a row and don't be afraid to tell lies. You have my permission. Not that that means anything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
We are blessed to have so many people, professionals, and entire society supporting us. So we are looking forward to this victory and definitely appreciate all of the support. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Героям слава. A quick question, Joel. Is it like Ghost of Kyiv airplane on your T-shirt?
Top Gun.
Oh, that's
Top Gun.
Okay.
that's their version of Ghost of Kiev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, we are off.